Hello and welcome back to another video lesson still about statistics. For this video lesson, we are going to illustrate the measures of central tendency, the mean, median, and mode of grouped data. Recall that measure of central tendency is a descriptive statistic wherein we simply compute for a single value that will attempt to describe a set of data by identifying the central position within that set of data. Here are the three common measures that we have: the mean, which is also referred to as the average; the median, which is the middle score in our set of data; and the mode is the score or data with the highest frequency. Ito pa rin po ang mga i-compute nating measures of central tendency, but this time using grouped data. Remember that whenever we have a grouped data, this is usually arranged in a frequency table wherein the first column refers to the class interval or the groupings of data that we have, while the second column refers to the frequency or the number of occurrence of the data. This time, to compute for the measures of central tendency, hindi lang ito ang ating kakailanganin, but we need to add columns here that will give us the other data that we'll use in our computation process. First is the class mark. This refers to the midpoint of the class interval. To compute for the midpoint, we simply just need to add the first and last score in this interval, then divide it by 2. So 1 plus 5 divided by 2. We'll have 3. 6 plus 10 divided by 2, 8, and so on, so forth. So this is the midpoint, which has the symbol x sub m for our class mark. The next column has the variables f and x sub m. It means we simply need to multiply each frequency to each class mark. So 3 times 3, 9, 7 times 8, 56, and so on, so forth. Again, this symbol is just the product of the frequency and the class mark. And the last column refers to the cumulative frequency. We will simply add the frequencies that we have here from one class interval to the other. When we say less cumulative frequency, we simply start from the frequency with the lowest class interval. Dito, ang ating lowest class interval is 1 to 5, and ang frequency niyan is 3. This means that we'll start from the frequency 3, then add the next one, 3 plus 7, 10, plus 20, 30, plus 24, 54, plus 6, 60. Notice na itong final cumulative frequency natin ay equal sa pinaka-total frequency ng ating data. For a final total of our frequency, let's use the variable capital letter N. This means that we have 60 samples or 60 pieces of data here, at lagi itong equal sa pinaka-last cumulative frequency dito. Again, tinawag itong cumulative frequency dahil nag-a-accumulate or patuloy na tumataas ang ating data. So let's now compute for the first measure of central tendency, which is called the mean or the average. To compute for this, we're going to use this formula in which this symbol refers to the sum of the products of the frequency and the class marks divided by the total frequency. Dahil nabuo na natin yung table natin, mas madali na nating mahanap yung mga hinihingi ng bawat variable. So gamitin po natin itong formula na ito. Para sa ating numerator, dahil nakuha na po natin yung mga product ng frequency and class mark using this column, we simply just need to add the following: 9 plus 56 plus 260 plus 432 plus 138, that will give us the sum equal to 895. divided by our N, which is the total frequency, and that is 60. Just divide 895 divided by 60, that is equal to 14.92. That means the mean or the average of 60 sample data that we have here is equal to 14.92. Let's have another example. This table refers to the weights in kilograms of 25 students. So, kompleto na po ang ating data dito, and let us just compute for its mean, still using this formula. Ito na po yung product ng frequency and class mark. 4 times 37, 148, 7 times 42, 294, and so on and so forth. And we simply just add that, and we got this sum. So let's just substitute those values in our formula. We'll have 1,215 divided by 25, 48.6. The mean or the average weight in kilograms of students is equal to 48.6 kilograms. Next, let's have the median of group data. This time, we'll be using this formula, wherein X sub LB refers to the lower class boundary of median class, N refers to the total frequency, less CF means less than cumulative frequency of the median class, F sub M refers to the frequency of the median class, and I refers to the class size. Let's still use this set of data. To compute for the median or the middle score, kailangan ay alam muna natin kung nasaan yung median class, which has the formula N over 2. Here, we have a total of 60 samples or 60 data. Divided by 2, we have 30. That means the median is on the 30th score once we have arranged it from smallest to highest value. Para malaman kung nasaan yung pang 30th data, dito tayo titingin sa less cumulative frequency. This 3 refers to the first 3 smallest. 10 means from the 4th to 10th smallest. And then here we have 30. Nandito ang ating 30th data. Pag alam na natin kung nasaan ang median class, it is important to highlight that class dahil marami tayong kukunin in this class interval. Ito po ang ating median class. Now let us substitute the following. First, let's have the lower class boundary of the median class. So dito sa ating median class na may class interval na 11 to 15, ang tinatawag nating lower class boundary is yung pinaka-smallest score minus 0.5. So 11 minus 0.5, that will give us 10.5. So that's what we call lower class boundary. Pag sinabi namang higher class boundary, ito naman ay lalagyan nyo ng plus 5. So 15 plus 0.5, 15.5. Ito yung mga tinatawag nating class boundary dahil acceptable dito yung mga scores na nagre-range from 10.5 up to 15.5 maximum. Dahil ang hinahanap lang is ang lower class boundary, we will simply use 10.5. Next, N over 2. So we have completed that already. That is 30 or the median class minus the less cumulative frequency. This time, ito yung katapat niyang cumulative frequency. Pero hindi ito yung ating pipiliin. Ang pipiliin natin is yung cumulative frequency before that. So instead of 30, what we'll write here is yung frequency before that, which is 10, divided by FM. Or FM refers to the frequency of median class. So dito naman sa ating median class, ang pinaka-frequency na tinatawag is this frequency. So that is 20. And the last variable refers to I, which is the class size. Ano nga ba yung size ng bawat class interval na to? Ilan yung data from 11 to 15? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, we have 5 pieces of data here. Therefore, our class size is equal to 5. Now that we have already identified the values of each variable, we can now solve the following. Using our MDES rule, let's just compute first what's inside our parentheses. 60 divided by 2, 30, minus 10, that's 20. 20 divided by 20, that's 1, times 5. So we'll have 10.5 plus 1 times 5, 5. This will be equal to 15.5. That means the middle score from 1 to 25 with the following frequencies is equal to 15.5. Again, importante po na kapag nagko-compute ng median, hanapin po muna ang ating median class. That is by using n over 2 to get the middle data. At dito po natin yan makikita by looking at the less cumulative frequency column. I-mark po natin yan or lagyan ng box or circle para guided tayo sa ibang variables na hinahanap sa ating formula. Let's have another example for the median. Before computing for the median, it's important to compute for the median class, which is equal to n over 2 or total number of data divided by 2. Here we have 25 data divided by 2, that is equal to 12.5. Remember that median is the middle score after we have arranged the data from smallest to highest. At dito sa ating frequency table, naka-arrange na po ito from smallest to highest. That means our first 4 scores have this data at nandito naman ang pinaka-matataas na score. So, para mahanap kung nasaan yung 12.5 position, dito po tayo titingin sa ating less cumulative frequency. 4 here refers to the first 4 smallest score. 11 refers to the 5th to 11th smallest score. At nandito na po ang ating 12, 13, and 14th smallest score. Therefore, ang ating 12.5 position or data is nandito sa ating class interval or median class na ito. Okay? Next, let's substitute other given. X sub LB, which refers to the lower class boundary. So, titingnan lang po natin yung class interval at kung ano yung pinaka-lowest niya, minus 0.5. We have 45 minus 0.5, 44.5. Next, n over 2, 25 over 2, minus the less cumulative frequency. Sa ating less cumulative frequency, hindi po ito yung katapat sa median class, but rather yung less or the frequency before that. So, ang frequency bago mag-14 is 11. So, that is what we call the less cumulative frequency here. Divided by f of m, which is the frequency of the median class. Ito ang ating median class at ang pinaka-frequency dyan is 3. So, divided by 3 times I, which is the class size. So, ang ating class size from 45 to 49, ilang peraso po iyon? 5 peraso din. Therefore, we'll have here times 5. Okay? So, now that we have substituted the data, let's just compute for the following. So, here we have 25 divided by 2, 12.5 minus 11. That's 1.5 divided by 3 times 5. 1.5 divided by 3, that's 0.5 times 5, that is 2.5. And lastly, 44.5 plus 2.5, that is equal to 47. Therefore, the median here is equal to 47. Another way to interpret that is The middle score of 25 samples or data from 35 to 69 is 47 kilograms. Lagi pong tatandaan na bago mag-compute ng median ay hanapin muna ang ating median class. That is by dividing the total frequency by 2. Next is to find the other values of the variable. The third measure of central tendency is what we call the mode. This time, we'll be using this formula, wherein XLB refers to the lower class boundary of modal class, while D sub 1 and D sub 2 refers to the difference of the frequencies of modal class and the class intervals, while I refers to the class size. Since we're computing for the mode, we are still looking on the highest frequency. So, hanapin po muna natin ang modal class, which is the class interval with the highest frequency. So, dito, ang highest frequency ay 24, which means this one is the modal class. Now, let's use the formula. So, XLB is the lower class boundary of the modal class. So, ganun pa rin, ang lower class boundary is yung smallest data dito, minus 0.5, that is 15.5. So, dito, we have D sub 1 and D sub 2. D refers to the difference. Dito ay isasubtract lang po natin ang mga frequencies. For D sub 1, we subtract the frequency of the modal class 24 minus the frequency of the next lower class interval. Ang lower class interval na katabi nito is yung 11 to 15 at ang frequency niyan is 20. That means our D sub 1 is 24 minus 20, that is 4. While our D sub 2 is just the difference of frequency of modal class minus the next higher class interval. Ang kasunod na class interval ay 21 to 25 at ang frequency naman nito ay 6. So this time, our D sub 2 refers to the difference of 24 and 6. So 24 minus 6, that's 18. So, ganun lang po, hanapin ang ating D sub 1 and D sub 2. Isasubtract lang natin yung frequency ng ating modal class sa lower at sa higher class interval frequency. And then the last variable, we have I for the class size. So, 1 to 5, we have 5 pieces of data there. So, therefore, our I is equal to 5. So, now let us just compute for the following. 4 divided by 4 plus 18, 22 times 5. 4 times 5, 20 divided by 22. We'll have here 0.90. Add this to 15.5 plus 0.90, 16.409. Therefore, in this set of scores, the most frequent score is about 16.409. Okay? So again, don't forget, hanapin po muna yung modal class, which is the class interval with the highest frequency. Then, substitute the value of these variables that depend on this modal class. Let's have another example for the mode. Before using the formula, it is good to find first the modal class. That is the class interval with the highest frequency. This is for the interval 40 to 44 because 7 is the highest frequency. Next, let us substitute the value of these variables. The lower class boundary of the modal class, 40 minus 0.5, that is 39.5. Next, let's find the difference of the frequencies, starting from the frequency of the modal class, 7, minus yung frequency ng lower class interval, 4. So, 7 minus 4, 3. For D sub 2, we subtract the frequency of the modal class minus the frequency of the higher class interval. So, this time, 7 minus 3. That is equal to 4. And the last one is the class interval. 40 to 44, we have 5 pieces of data there. So now let us compute 39.5 plus the product of 3 over 7 times 5. So we'll have 15 over 7, which is equal to 2.14 plus the lower class boundary 39.5, that is equal to 41.64. Therefore, our mode for this set of data is 41.64. Another way to interpret that, the common weights of 25 students is equal to 41.64 kilograms. Alright, so let us summarize the different formulas for the measures of central tendency in group data. First, we have the mean, in which we simply get the sum of the products of frequency and class marks, then divide it by the total frequency. Second, for the median, it's important to find first the median class, that is by dividing the total frequency by 2, and then the rest of the variables will depend on that. And for the mode, or the highest frequency, find first the modal class, that is the class interval with the highest frequency, and then the rest will depend on that, especially the difference of the frequencies of the modal class to its lower and higher class interval. Here, marami tayong variables na ginagamit at values na kailangan sa ating computation. Just need to practice and try it para mas lalo nating maintindihan. So now let's have some practice. Complete first the frequency distribution table before computing for the different measures of central tendency. The data that we have here represent the score of 40 students in a 70-item diagnostic test. So you can do the following in 10 minutes, pause this video for a while, and then double check your answers afterwards. So here we have completed our frequency distribution table, wherein x sub m refers to the class mark. That is the midpoint for this class interval, wherein we simply add the first and last value divided by 2. For f times x sub m, we simply multiply each frequency to each class mark. And for the cumulative frequency, we start with the frequency of the smallest class interval and then add the other frequencies up to the last class interval. And one way to check if we have added it correctly is that this one is equal to the total frequency. Alright, for the mean, we simply just need to get the sum of the products of frequency and the class mark, which is equal to 1690, divided by the total frequency, 40. That will give us the mean, or the average, 42.25. We simply look first on the median class, which can be found by using n over 2, or the total frequency divided by 2. That means the median class or score refers to the 20th value. So dito tayo titingin sa less cumulative frequency column. Nasaan po yung pang 20th? So this one refers to first 2 lowest, first 19 lowest, at nandito yung pang 20 to 31st score. So therefore, nandito po ang ating median class. The lower class boundary is 39.5 plus the median class minus the cumulative frequency before that, that's 19, divided by the frequency of that median class, 12, and the class size is 10 because there are 10 data from 60 to 69 because there are 10 data in each interval. So by computing for the following, the middle score in this data in a 70 item test is 40.33. And the last one, for the mode, we find first the modal class, which is the class interval with the highest frequency, 17. From this, let's get the lower class boundary, which is 30 minus 0.5, that is 29.5, plus the difference of the frequencies of the modal class minus the frequency of the lower class interval, 17 minus 2, 15, while d sub 2 is 17 minus 12, that is 5. And still, our class size is equal to 10. After computing the following, we can get the value 37, which represent the mode of this set of data. That means the most frequent score in a 70-item diagnostic test is 37. So Thank you very much for listening. I hope natutunan po kung paano mag-compute ng measures of central tendency using grouped data. Kung hindi pa po napapanood ang ating video lesson about computing for this using ungrouped data, please watch that video. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to learn more about mathematics. Thank you and God bless.